Hey everyone, welcome to the Elite Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Popple, along with my co-host, William McClellan. How you doing today, Will?
Dude, really excited for today. Really excited because I think this might be one of the first really good back and forth kind of conversations on new construction. So I know that at least around here, it's a lot of fix and flips, wholesaling, kind of things like that. There's a small select group of people that do new construction. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, so now today we have Taylor Brown with us. So Taylor is definitely doing a whole lot in the Niceville area. He's a family man, very involved in his church. He started 850 Investment Group and was flipping houses, and then in 2020 he started Copilot Properties in Niceville, where he has been doing construction full time, completed 59 projects. Currently have 12 under construction and 3 in the pipeline. So without further ado, how you doing today, Taylor?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. And I'll just say off the top, I'm more of an introvert. I like one-on-one conversations. So I'm going to try my best here. And then also, I don't really like to talk about myself. So don't really love that. But I just want to be a resource and help people, because there's been a lot of people that have poured into me and helped me over the years. So really, that's my goal today. So thanks again for having me.
Oh man, well we appreciate you coming on, and we can definitely tell you're a humble guy, but today is the day that we want you to brag, because but the more you tell us everything you've done and everything you accomplished, the more you're helping someone else out there. Because like this is the time where you're not bragging for your own benefit, you're bragging to inspire and help others. And no one knows what's capable until you tell people like what you've done, because man, 59 projects is a lot. And hearing someone complete that, I know you just inspired me knowing that you've done that many since starting in 2020. That's definitely right around the average that Will and I are trying to be able to hit per year. And so I'm already feeling inspired.
Appreciate the pep talk.
Yeah. So anyway, Taylor, let's start back in 2008. You launched the 850 Investment Group right after the housing crash. What gave you the confidence to jump into real estate during one of the most uncertain times in recent history?
Yeah, so I was a recent college graduate, I think about like a year or two at that point. I was in my first job. I was thinking about going to law school, and so I was pursuing that. And then my full-time job was being the comptroller for a lawyer that I knew in Panama City, who was also very involved in real estate. So that kind of gave me the real estate bug. I learned a lot, and he kind of like pulled me alongside him and let me be in all of his meetings and conversations and things like that. And so that's kind of where it started for me. I was single, and so I wasn't making a ton of money. And so that was also one of the other driving forces, was like, hey, I can make, some money on the side. And so that's kind of how I got started. I partnered up initially with a buddy who had just started a home inspection business. And we like came up with this harebrained idea to take this dilapidated property, evict the people that were there and not paying their bills, and doing some sketchy stuff, fix it up and resell it. And it happened to work out by the grace of God. And then that was project number one. And then it just kind of kept going from there.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. So like, take us back even like before that. Something I really enjoy about hopping on calls on Wednesday is just getting to get to know people. And I know that you prefaced hopping on here that you're like an introvert and things like that. So it's just kind of like an open-ended conversation. Doing the Facebook Live is actually pretty new. This is my first one as well. So having some heart palpitations, like feeling kind of like nervous is different, because all these other ones we kind of record and then we can edit some things, but this is like live, and so it'll be fun for the people that are listening. But like, tell us who Taylor is, where you grew up, kind of what you were doing before you set out on this journey in 2008.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So I was born in Panama City, Florida. My family moved around growing up. So I lived for several years in New Mexico, in Roswell, where the aliens supposedly landed. And then moved to San Diego, California. Lived there for basically the end of elementary school and middle school. And then we moved back to Panama City. I went to high school and then went off to college. So I consider Northwest Florida home. I'm the oldest of four siblings, four kids. So I have a younger sister, a brother, and then another younger sister. Grew up playing sports, involved in music. I kind of have like a lot of different interests. I'm kind of a strange in that way. I'm not like super good at anything, but decent at a lot of things and a lot of different interests. So yeah, I consider this area home. Went off to school 2 years at the Air Force Academy. That was kind of like my first dream, was to be a fighter pilot.
Sweet.
And it was a lifelong dream since I was in like third grade to go there, and never thought I could, and had the opportunity to. And day one, I absolutely hated it and felt like a fish out of water. But your first year there is really difficult. And so I wanted to stay and go through the second year, just so I wasn't making a biased decision. But I still just didn't feel like I was a good fit there. So I left and thought I would regret it, and didn't regret it at all since I left. I finished up college up at the University of Tennessee Martin. It's up in Northwest Tennessee. I played football. I was a kicker. So not the sexy position, but it paid the bills, and I had fun doing that.
Few injuries in the kicking position too. So you get
you score points and you don't get injured. So it's
right. No, you get all the perks and benefits of being on the team.
Unless you miss the game-winning field goal, then it's not
right.
safe. You're either or the zero. So there's no in between.
Exactly.
So I graduated college, moved back to Panama City, trying to figure out my life, and that's kind of where real estate began for me.
Man, yeah. So talking about the aliens, we could go on a whole nother topic now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's why I'm so weird. You don't know if I'm an alien or not.
Roswell, man. But then San Diego, so it's not a bad place to be. But bringing it back here to Northwest Florida, what was kind of after this first experience? You flipped this house. People were doing some bad things. You had to evict them, go through that process, which I'm sure was like a major learning curve, which is also really great. So a lot of people might be nervous to hop into a situation like that, but then we do have a lot of episodes, actually, if people go back, where there's a lot of similar situations like this, where you kind of just like dive in head first, maybe get a partner, kind of like what you had mentioned, but then kind of moving forward from that first project, just kind of reading into your bio, it sounds like you kind of found your niche into first-time home buyer properties and that kind of funnel. What led you through the business, and kind of take us from that first house and what real estate's done up to that point?
Sure. So one of the biggest, benefits for me starting after the crash is I hadn't experienced like any of that crazy money. I think on my first deal, I made like 10 grand or something. And, but for me at the time, that was like a third of my salary as somebody starting out.
Sure.
And so I felt like I was a millionaire, but I think that was like kind of the first thing that worked out in my favor, is I didn't start when like these numbers were crazy and I got used to something that wasn't sustainable. So it just kind of built from there. The first one was successful. I mean, there were problems and issues we had to work through, just like on every project, but with hard work and perseverance and all that kind of stuff, we were able to navigate that. And so it made me want to do the next project. And so we did the next project and then the next project. And that's just kind of how it started. And then, because the market had crashed, really first time home buyers were the only ones that were purchasing at the time. And so that was kind of like where we focused, we were buying houses on the cheap, fixing it up, still doing good work, but fixing them up on the cheap. And then we were able to sell them to somebody for cheap as well. And so that helped me to continue to do, project after project also, is just kind of focusing on that first time home buyer market, because that's where the buyers were at the time.
No, you're able to be agile and things like that. I think that's huge. Like, kind of talk to the listeners a little bit about that transitionary period. Like, how many houses did it take or how many projects were you working until you said like, hey, this is where we're focusing on, this is what the market's doing. And as we get, later into the podcast, obviously your trend and where you kind of niche down still is evolving and where you're moving towards. So that's something that a number of people that we've had on, they talk about how they have to be, fluid and open to new business ideas. Talk to the listeners a little bit about your thoughts on that and, project to project.
Sure. Yeah, so it just seemed to be like that's where the market was at the time. And, I didn't have like a ton of capital either. So I needed to find these affordable projects, and I only had like limited capital that I could use to fix them up. So that also kind of helped guide me and direct me into that specific market, so some was just like necessity.
Yeah.
But then, continued to be agile. I started out like focusing on that and flipping, and then gradually some of the flip projects got a little bit bigger. But then kind of the jump from flipping to new construction was kind of in the same way. We're talking about being fluid. We moved over here to Niceville, and at the time the market was crazy, which is funny to say because now it's like even more crazy.
Insane, yeah.
What year was that move to Niceville?
The summer of 2016.
Okay. Now, as you were building your business, what were some of those big challenges you faced early on, and how'd you get through them?
Capital is always a challenge. I mean, even in my business today, I think that's just like a challenge of real estate. You have deals and you have limited capital and limited resources. So you just have to be able to do the ones that you can do at the time. That's where I have to remind myself, like when I start getting discouraged or I feel like I missed out on a particular project or deal because of capital. I'm just reminded that like you can only do the best with what you have. Like that's excellence. Excellence is doing the best with what you have. And for whatever reason, that particular project, you're not able to do it, it's fine. Just focus on the ones that you can do and then be ready for the next one. And, fortunately, that's just kind of, I've been blessed for our business and our real estate journey to progress organically in that way. Continuing to pivot, be flexible, like you mentioned, and also just to be able to do the deals that you can do and then move on to the next one, not get discouraged.
I think that's really wise advice. And I actually was writing down because that's something that we always are getting asked about is like, how'd you get the money? And something you're being really open and honest in the start of your business. You're saying I had limited capital. I was focusing on smaller projects because that's what I could handle. And it was okay. I was making money, but it's not making money, hand over fist or foot and just kind of rolling it. Right. So with that always kind of being top of mind, even now in your business, this is something Sam and I we had a long deep dive this past weekend where we went to a small conference, and they had a time where they were kind of pitching a couple different upfront capital, like loan options, bridge options, a couple different things, but we were kind of talking through it, and it's like, I still don't know if that's exactly the route for us. So for maybe someone starting off, what were those things you were doing with capital? Was it specifically what you had saved and then you're building the business from there, or were you using hard money, which I'm sure a lot of people, they're always, questioning that, especially when you've never used it for the first time. It's like kind of nerve wracking. Or, kind of tell us what the way you navigated through that to now.
Yeah. So I've always been scrappy, and I'm not saying that anybody should do any of the things that I've done. I'll just tell you what I've done. But I've always tried to figure out, up until like the door completely slammed shut, I will do whatever I need to do to figure out how to piece a deal together. So on my very first deal, me and my buddy, we had like no money. So our very first deal actually was a house that my boss at the time owned. And it was a rental property for him, but it was terrible tenants, just a terrible situation. So we approached him and said, hey, we'll evict the people, we'll fix it up on our dime. We will like figure out how to sell it, all that kind of stuff. We'll do it in X amount of time. I think we said like, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it was. And we'll guarantee you X amount of dollars. That's all you have to do is let us do it.
No way.
And so he said, sure. So we didn't have to come out of pocket any money up front for the purchase of the property. All we had to do was pay for the renovation costs. We did a lot of the labor ourselves. And then we, orchestrated the sale and all that kind of stuff. So he just, showed up at the closing table, signed over the deed, and got a check. So it was a good deal for him. And then it was a great deal for us. So that's how deal number one happened. Oh, and we also got used a credit card for the renovation expenses. I think we had like a $5,000, whatever, $8,000 credit card that we used, that we floated, and then we paid off whenever the deal was finished and done with. So,
and did you guys do all the renovations yourselves?
Yeah, we did. And another kind of funny part of my story, I was like not very handy. I've always been a great problem solver, so I feel like I can work hard enough and talk to whoever I need to talk to, read what I need to read, and I can figure out how to do most things. But yeah, I'd never like unclogged or like barely unclogged a toilet, let alone like change the toilet, tile, flooring, painting, like any of that kind of stuff. But that's where it all started for me, learning the ins and outs of every little piece of the project. And so, yeah, that's our first deal. That's how we did it. From there, I think my second deal, I actually used my first time home buyer's loan to buy that house. Again, I'm not saying I would recommend any of this. This is just what we did. Oh, and because I was single at the time, what we would do if we didn't have the project sold by the time we were done, I would move into that property, live there for whatever, handful of weeks. So I would be paying the utilities, everything until we sold it. So we didn't have any like crazy carry costs or anything like that.
Nice.
That's how we did number two. From there, I think deal number three was our first foray into partnering with a private investor. So I was like my first, situation where I was dealing with a hard money loan, and it was a great experience. So I've used, conventional lending several times, but I've also, built a really good handful of relationships with different investment partners that have been a huge part of helping us get to where we are today that we wouldn't have been able to do without them.
No, that's awesome, man. No, I think that's like three really creative strategies on deal 1, 2, 3 that are totally separate from each other. So for anyone that's listening that wants to kind of hop in, it's just all about being creative, right? And having that risk tolerance, understanding what you can do, and even like to your point, you did all of the renovations and you didn't necessarily label yourself too handy. Yep. So that's something that's even more impressive. It's like, hey, I know the numbers work. I figured out this really creative way where I actually don't even own it yet. It's my boss's home, but he has a problem. And I'm, like you said, a problem solver in that situation, right? You said that's something that you really kind of pride yourself on, is being able to problem solve. And you did that on the financing side, and then, getting the job done. So that's awesome. And I hate that I'm just kind of like fast forwarding here because I'm so curious on this 12-year timeline. But I know in 2020, just kind of launching us here, you guys started Co-Pilot Properties as a full-time construction business. So from 2008, when you guys started 850 to 2020, it was mainly flips, right? That was predominantly what you were doing?
Well, from 2008 to 2016, those were all flips.
All flips.
And so I was also working, my regular job, full-time job at the time, and then we were just flipping on the side, and we were just doing one project at a time. And then in 2016, just by necessity of the market being crazy, and hey, it was actually our personal house. Said my grandfather is a contractor. He mainly did commercial work. And so again, kind of like scheming and brainstorming, talking to him, I found a property. We ran the numbers. I'm like, I can build a house for the same or cheaper than all these other houses are for sale for, but they need like a ton of work and all that kind of stuff. So he said, yeah, I'll help you pull the permit. I'll kind of show you who you need to talk to, and then you can just kind of run it from there, and then let me know if you have questions. So that was the first house we built, was in 2016. It was actually our personal house. And then then it kind of like clicked on, hey, the flip deals are becoming more and more difficult to find. They're getting more expensive. Profit margins are getting a lot less, and they're a lot more riskier. And so then, like, hey, I like new construction. This might be kind of like the new thing that we want to do as far as real estate's concerned. So then we kept building one at a time, spec homes, selling them, and then up until 2020, I was still doing that part-time. But then 2020, I left my full-time job, and then we started pursuing it full-time.
And that's when you opened Copilot. So I'm actually glad that you corrected me, because I knew there had to be something filling that dozen-year gap there. So 2020, you're in it 100%. So kind of what inspired that pivot is really out of necessity and of the market shifting, and it's harder to find deals.
Yep.
But there's also a huge benefit of getting to live into a new house that you built, right?
Yep. Yeah. You walk in with instant equity.
Instant equity. I love it. And I want to just tackle that a little bit. What would be your advice if you were new, you don't have a home yet, going through the building process or purchasing new? What are kind of those pros and cons? And then how did that really launch the business into what it is now?
So can I ask it again, just so I understand?
So like for people that are listening right now that want to get into their first deal and they maybe don't have a house and these deals are difficult, what do you think would be an ideal situation for them to go through this building process and maybe build a new construction home? And with your experience in 2020, how did that help understanding that new construction process, moving in now, just propel the business in a whole new avenue?
I gotcha. Yeah, I still think, new construction is still a great option for people to walk in with instant equity, whether they're able to, figure out a way to build it themselves. Even, some of these big builders I see that are offering these like crazy, good deals on new construction homes, or even offering in-house financing for like, 3.9% or whatever I've seen. I know people who have done it several times, bought like a tract home from one of the big name builders, but then gone in and customized stuff. So they've upgraded all the light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, done trim, accents, all that kind of stuff. And then when it came time to resell, sell that property and actually make a pretty good profit just doing that. So if I were somebody, looking to get into a new construction home right now as a first time home buyer or whatever, those would be kind of the things I think that I would consider right now.
Now, I think that's awesome. And actually what you spoke on was very similar to me transitioning out of flips to now me getting started with new construction with Will. I think my the last flip I did was kind of right when the market was turning right around the 22 to 23 area, when I think I bought a flip right, or bought a house to rehab right when everything was still kind of at the end of the hot market, and then trying to sell it into the start of the cold market.
Yeah.
And, it's like that one I pretty much barely broke even on. I think I made like $500 after everything. And that one was one for me.
You got to push through those deals too. That's the name of the game.
Nah, so but that was kind of, for me, that was like, all right, I need to take a step back, and that's where I started seeing all the benefits of new construction, because for me, I basically saw it all as, okay, this is all financial analysis on the front end. After you kind of figure out, if you're buying the land right and got the right, build and everything. And thankfully, I got a great partner, Will, who's been through this process a bunch of times to, help me walk through it a lot more seamlessly. But like you after you kind of get through all the stuff in the beginning and get rolling with it, it's a lot smoother process versus when you do a flip, as you open up one wall and then all of a sudden you have a whole other set of problems that you didn't even plan for. So
that was one of the things I liked moving from flipping to new construction. Also, I'm like, whoa, like there's still problems, but they're a little bit more expected, and you can kind of navigate that a little bit easier. It's also a longer process, so under like so much pressure. And then I also like the capital outlay being different too. So you take down the land, but then the construction, that's spaced out. Where in a flip, you have this massive capital outlay in the beginning that then you're instantly under this whole other level of pressure that you gotta, finish the renovation, get it sold to offload that. Where new construction is a little bit different.
No, and that's so well said, because like on my very last flip, getting the work done wasn't my issue. It was trying to sell it in the cold market. Like we knocked the whole thing out in 4 months. It was me holding it that other 5-6 months that hurt the deal. And so, yeah, no, as you said, that is exactly right, that you have the immediate outlay of capital in the beginning, and then you got to carry the costs.
Yeah.
But since you completed now 59 projects with more underway, what types of projects are you most passionate about, and which ones challenge you the most?
So I've come to discover here the last few years, I really like the development side. So I really like, finding a distressed property or kind of a unique, weird property and figuring out how to maximize that, even if that means going through like, the redevelopment process. I know it's a lot of like red tape and headaches and babysitting at times, but, I like talking to all the different players at the different, municipalities, whether it's the county, the city, looking at the different zoning laws, going for the board to ask for variances, talking to the neighbors to get them on board with different things you want to do, all the way to working with like, utility providers, site contractors. It's just so cool to me to see like raw land then turn into something where there's like now a road, power, water, sewer, all that kind of stuff. And dealing with the different people and municipalities to work through those problems. So that's something that I've come to discover that I like. Again, capital, that's a whole other level of like capital and checks going one way for a long period of time, even before you get to the vertical construction part.
Totally.
Yeah, but
I think that's an important element of it as well, right? Like those deferred costs. It's not the same as just like this lump sum house that in the flip, like you're saying, that you put forward and then you got to kind of recreate it from the inside out. This one's like from the ground up, but there's a lot of hidden costs, literally hidden underneath the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I mean, any unique. We still do renovations on some level too. So that's actually something my wife does all our design stuff and for our projects.
Oh, nice.
We still like flips and renovations because it's like you have to tap into this different kind of creativity part of your brain. Where with new construction, like we've said, it's more like planned out, what to expect, all that kind of stuff. But when you're doing a renovation, you have to work within the confines that you're given. And so there's a unique challenge there. So yeah, I mean, we still like all kinds of projects. I love seeing like how something started and then what it ended up being, whether it's new construction, development, renovation, whatever. We like fun projects, and we like working with fun people. So those are kind of our two big things.
Yeah, man. So kind of diving into that a little bit. So talk to the listeners a little bit, like, are you doing custom homes, spec homes, multifamily, the fix and flip, the renovations, the development? Kind of dive into some of those details of, I know you just said you prefer the development side, so maybe give us a couple examples of those types of projects and what you're doing right now, and all the different, sub projects within kind of your business.
Sure.
And tell a little bit about, just talk a little bit about Copilot Properties and all the facets of what the business makes up. Yeah.
So when we started in 2020, we were doing like anything that we needed to do to pay the bills, and at some level, we'll still do that. Like if stuff starts to slow down or whatever, we'll do whatever we need to do to pay the bills. Fortunately, we have enough that we're currently working on and in the pipeline that we've been able to be a little bit more choosy. So we get calls for renovations and new like custom homes and all that kind of stuff. But right now we have one custom home that we're about halfway done with. For us, we found that we don't love custom homes just because it's a lot of work, dealing with the particular client. Well, sometimes it's not. It depends, but it can be more work, and for the same amount of money or sometimes less money because of the work you have to spend in doing that. But we've done several custom homes. We've done spec homes. We've done renovations. What we're doing now a lot is partnering with some of our investment partners. So they're people that we're either doing, we've set up like a JV with, a joint venture, where we buy a project, we'll build some. We're actually doing a lot of townhouses right now. So we're finding these infill lots that are zoned right and everything and can fit, anywhere from 2 to 4 townhouses on them.
Awesome.
So we're partnering with several of our investment partners, kind of doing that right now. We just finished on 30A with some other investment partners. We've done projects with before, but it's a short-term rental house that we decided to keep for the time being. And so we're doing the whole short-term rental thing on that one. But yeah, we're doing a little bit of everything, but a lot of what we seem to be doing right now and that we have coming up are multifamily type jobs, whether they're townhouses or something like that.
Have you sold most of your, I'm assuming you sold most of your projects, but how many ones are you holding on to?
So most of these we're holding on to, and so we're in a partnership of some form or fashion. And so we've been really aggressive over the last few years in trying to build a rental portfolio. So as many as we can keep, that's the plan.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we've sold some of them, and actually, so we actually finished. We have an 11-unit townhouse project that we did. We built the first building. We finished a 5 that we finished last fall. Well, we've had trouble selling those, so we've actually sold 4 of them. We're under contract to sell I think the 4th one now, but we're still holding on to one of those. And then we have where we can build 2 more buildings of 3 each, so 6 more total. So the plan there was to sell, a portion of them and to retain a portion of them. And then
awesome.
The market, we've had to kind of pivot. But going back to new construction, that's been one of the beautiful things, like you mentioned, that if you buy the dirt right and you kind of know where you're at on your costs, we like to have like plan A, B, and C. And so, retaining a property and keeping it as a rental property, whether that's like the goal or not, even if plan A was to sell it, whenever you have new construction, typically if you've gotten into the deal at the right spot, you still have enough equity in there that you're not going to lose, or you have time to kind of weather the storm. And so that's been our case on those townhouses. We've had to hold them a lot longer than we initially thought, but we've been able to, do price adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And so we're not going to like lose money or anything like that. It's not going to be as good as we initially anticipated, but because we started off with, a decent amount of equity in there, we've been able to kind of, navigate and pivot as needed.
No, that's awesome, man. I think something important, a couple things that are important there. You mentioned you're okay if you buy the dirt right and run those numbers. So how are you guys like working through a land acquisition? And if I'm a newbie, what am I kind of looking for as a parameter set of like, this is going to be a pretty good deal if I know X, Y, and Z. I have a good contractor. He has X price per square foot. From there, it's kind of just a numerical formula that's kind of quantified, but the big outlier is really that dirt cost, right? And then maybe
a simple way to ask that would be, what percentage of the project do you spend on the dirt?
Because there's impact fees sometimes, there's tap fees sometimes, and there's a lot of fees up front that people don't even like add into it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's also important to understand, since you guys are doing things at such scale, like how are you acquiring it? And if I'm new, what should I be looking for? Or how do I get in a position to partner with someone like yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, on the acquisition part, we have all the same, kind of avenues that everybody else does. So I have a buddy who does wholesaling. I've actually never bought anything from him just because none of the stuff he's had to offer have been the right fit. But that's always an avenue that we've considered. Several of my flips early on, I bought from a wholesaler. So that was that avenue for us at the time. But I check every day. Every day I'm looking at real estate that either on the MLS, we have different realtors and stuff that we've worked with in the past who know what we do, and so we'll get some deals from them, whether they're off market or at least first looks, where they'll say, hey, this is coming available. And then on some of these redevelopment projects, part of how we've done them is just driving around and seeing something and then looking it up on the property appraiser site and seeing how it's zoned. And then kind of, now that we've done a handful of them, at least in this particular area, we know what to look for. And so we're looking on there going, hey, this parcel, this is the size that it is based on this other one. We know it's zoned right. It's in the city or it's in the county. It can fit this many units. And then even like doing like a cold call, writing them letters or just popping by, knocking on their door. Like I have one now. It's a 2-unit townhouse building we're almost finished with, and the property right next door is a dilapidated, terrible piece of property that somebody lives there. And I've just told him like, hey, if you ever want to sell, I'd be interested. I'll pay you cash. Fast closing. So I mean, I think going back to what I was saying at the very beginning, just being scrappy and figuring out whatever way works for that next deal and doing it. So whether it's just finding it on the MLS, doing a drive-by, whatever, just finding figuring out a way to find that deal and then make it happen.
No, I love it. That's awesome. So I guess if I'm new and I'm wanted to get into it and I want to take the least amount of risk, I should find maybe a good realtor and a good contractor, and then probably build a house for myself if I can afford the loan. And that's like a pretty simple entry point into this new construction game, you think? Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I think even if you have a contractor, depending on how involved they will let you be, or you want to be going to the job site, you learn a lot of steps, like even just getting like a conventional loan. And there's so many options when you're talking with especially local banks that are more interested in doing ground up construction. Like a lot of times they can do like a one-time close, you buy the lot and the build, and you put the budget all together, see what you can afford, see what kind of works.
Yep.
But there's so many things that go into the background, like of meeting with a draftsman, meeting with an architect, meeting with an engineer, shooting the grade, trying to figure out how much dirt's going to be needed, like all of these different types of things that are all on the front end before you ever even break ground. And if you kind of go through that process just as a retail buyer, but new construction, I think there's a lot of different steps where you can kind of learn and you see it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm, like you said earlier, like I'm turning nothing into something. And it's kind of really cool at the end. Like, okay, we just got a whole bunch of block delivered. Like, what is this going to do? Oh, wow, there's a whole bunch of steps that go into that. Now we have foundation poured. Oh, now we're going to get, some mechanicals done. We're going to get it all framed up. They're going to get everything kind of moving and picking out things and kind of watching the market as it moves. I think I'm really inspired, especially the fact that you're building to rent. I think that's like the ultimate goal. Can you talk a little bit about how the portfolio can more aggressively grow with this builder equity, kind of like what you mentioned in the former part of the call, as opposed to like trying to buy all of these, or maybe even doing them as a flip and then holding it?
Yeah. So I think if you're buying something that's already established and ready to go, you're going to pay a premium for that. It's not to say that there's not going to be any value add there. Maybe the rent isn't market value, can be adjusted, even if it's just 10% or a couple percent, whatever. So I think there's definitely like market, you can find deals that you can do a value add to, but I think that they would be incremental compared to new construction. So again, if you find the dirt right, you kind of know where you're at on your construction costs, and you're walking in with equity. You're going to be paying less in insurance because everything's like up to the current hurricane codes and stuff. For
the big one
specifically, yeah.
That's one of the ones Will and I always talk about. One of the biggest advantages of new construction in the state of Florida, particularly with as high as our insurance is what a break the new home buyer gets on buying a new construction home versus buying a older home when it comes to their insurance rates.
Yeah, and then your maintenance costs are going to be very small for the first 10 to 15 years, especially if you build it the right way. They're going to be very nominal for those first years also, where if you're buying a property that's older, unless the person that owned it before was keeping up with all the maintenance and stuff that needed to be done, you're going to be walking into some deferred maintenance. I saw that out on 30A back whenever the market went crazy. All these people wanted to buy these vacation homes over there because the market was going insane. They bought these properties that they're from out of state or just didn't know what to look for. They overpaid, and then they're finding out, oh, I have $100,000-$200,000 worth of deferred maintenance that I need to take care of,
especially near that salt water.
Yeah, and then now rents are going down because it was just kind of like an inflated period anyways, and so now you see all these people that are trying to offload these properties. So again, that's one reason why I'm personally biased towards new construction for some of those reasons.
Now, a lot of your growth has come from
napping over here because I feel like I've been on this lone island. Like everything you're saying, I just want to echo and echo times 2. And everyone thinks I'm crazy. They're like, I have to say, when I'm talking about a deal, everyone's like, well, why don't you just flip something?
Daniel Luke.
And I'm like, I'm not in on it. I'm sorry. Like I'm not in on it. Like I'm pretty locked in on new construction. I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I love keeping spreadsheets. I love breaking things down financially. And I feel like even if they're this one project, we're always super candid on here about like what we're dealing with. We had to, had to remove a tree. That was like a $5,000 kind of blow to the budget. But then by removing the tree and all of the organics, the lot, which was originally relatively level, it's kind of crazy to understand how much organics keep soil and sediment balanced and things like that. And so when you remove all of that, all of it falls, so we had to add a ton of dirt,
2 more loads of dirt,
a lot more block, like all of these kind of hidden costs that are pretty rare generally, but it's still not a major hit. And with new construction, with that builder equity, like you're saying, there's a lot more room for error. Kind of ripping a house down and seeing it's, getting a flip and it's termite infested, or black mold or something crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're seeing it right now, Will, or not, but compared to years past, I'm a lot of my subs are getting a little bit better on their pricing because they're slower, because some things have slowed down on new construction. So they're instead of me like having to harass them, when are you going to be there? Give me this quote or whatever. They're calling me, hey, when's the next job? What do you have going on? And so from there, I'm able to get a little bit, negotiate with them a little bit more than I've been able to the last few years.
That's awesome. Yeah, we were just talking with our contractor specifically, and he was saying kind of the same thing. Like, this is the first time in a really long time where people are calling him, like seeing, what's kind of next. Or it's like you're kind of just getting, rolled down the line. Like, oh, we're really busy.
Leave it, and you got to take it.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting kind of shift here, but I love new construction and I could talk on it, but I'm still wanting to dote on you and everything you've done. I mean, you sent us this awesome breakdown of all these interesting projects. And I would just love for you to kind of give like a little high level, and I'm going to kind of poke the bear here on, there's one where you're turned a mobile home park into a neighborhood, right?
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. And then you're building these 11 townhomes, which you just kind of told us about, but it's on like just one acre, right? You're able to do it with your like high density, I guess, or
yep.
And then you've done a ton of flips and then a lot of other just kind of spot lots, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but if you could kind of go through those and why you maybe liked or didn't like a certain subset of projects all within the new construction realm, I think that'd be really, really informative and insightful for some of the listeners.
Sure. I mean, they've all had their unique challenges, but
sure.
Again, as somebody who, I say I'm like a problem solver, that's what keeps this profession interesting to me. I get bored easily, so I'm like an operations guy. So it's like, let's figure out, some new system we need to develop or roll out or refine to make things work smoothly. And we're definitely still doing that, like in different ways. But to me, like what some people would consider problems in this industry are what keep it fun to me. So each, so in the mobile home park that you talked about, there's lots of challenges. The site work was more expensive than we thought it was going to be. Just lots of different challenges kind of along the way. We built, our lender only allowed us to build 10 units at a time. So in there initially, there were only 23 units. So our lender only would let us build 10 at a time, which at the time we almost went with another lender because they're going to let us build more. I'm thankful looking back because I'm not sure we could have done more than 10 at a time well. And then also the lender that kept us locked in at that, their rate was like way better than the other one. So, that was a blessing that we didn't know at that point in time initially. But, again, just
sometimes you got to thank God for the unanswered prayers,
100%. Yeah. Cause I think we locked in that, a 5-year balloon loan at like 4-point-something% where the other one was variable. So it would have been ridiculous, that's been something that's really helped our margins, as that particular property is one that we've held and retained as rental property. But, doing that deal, another parcel across the street came up that I happened to know the seller, was able to buy it from them, build 3 more, the same exact homes there. And then another person actually owned a property that butted up to the back part of that development on the cul-de-sac. And then looking at it, it was big enough to parcel off the back part of that and subdivide it and add it into our development and build 2 more units. So that's what got us to the 28.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
And what some of you are saying, some of those leads kind of was leading to what I was going to ask. So a lot of your growth has come from referrals, because I just, heard you say, someone you knew told you about this one. How have you built those relationships? And what are some advice you have for anyone new on like how to build those kind of relationships where you're constantly getting great referrals?
Yeah, I love meeting people. So, even getting connected to you guys, John Salmon, mentioned you, said, hey, would you want to talk to them? Whether it turned into what it is today, I still, wanted to make the connection and meet and talk. And so that's how I've been for as long as I can remember. I always ask people, who do you know that I need to know? They'll list off, a couple people that I need to meet, and then I'll meet with them. And if it's just a relationship, that's just a friendship that turns into something later in the future, that's great. But a lot of times it's like, they'll, hey, do you know somebody that does this? Or I'm looking for somebody that this, and I'm able to kind of help connect different people based on those particular needs. So that's something that I value. Even when we get a call for a project, sometimes I can tell off the beginning it's not one that I want to do, but I'll at least hear them out and kind of go look at it and then refer them to somebody else. So, continuing to kind of keep that relationship where I've said no to a project, but then they've called me sometimes years later or they've referred me to somebody else that's turned into a project. So, I'm interested in all kinds of people, and I feel like I can learn something from everybody, and not just, when it comes down to business, but just as a person and a human being. I'm interested, like you said, Will, in hearing people's stories. So that's kind of how it's continued to grow, organically. Some of our investment partners were people that just ran, like the 11-unit townhouse. It's a guy that's turned out to be a good friend, but he just cold called me and said, hey, I saw your website. Yeah, I saw your website, thought it was cool, would love to grab coffee. I have other, property that I've owned and done before. We'd love to meet up and just chat. So we did. And then it ended up to, like, fast forward a few weeks later, made an offer on that property, ended up getting it, and then going through the whole development process and partnering up on that deal. So
no way. That's wild. That's cool.
We got to make a better website, Will.
No, I think that's incredible. So are you guys kind of focused predominantly in Niceville, or are you guys creating broader scope, or you're feeling good where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, I love, so Niceville is where I live. I want to do as many projects as close to home as possible because that means less driving. Uh, and then, I know the market well, but kind of like our sphere of where we do work is in Niceville, Freeport. So going that way, Santa Rosa Beach, so kind of the other side of the bay, and then we've done a couple projects on 30A. So that's kind of like our loop. I get called a lot to do projects like in Fort Walton, up north, like in Crestview or something like that. I'm not opposed to them if like things change in our business where our sphere kind of moves that way. I'll do that, but kind of right now that's been kind of our circle. And we've kind of been talking about it again. It could change and pivot, but we don't really have this vision to grow this massive construction company. So adding employees and doing like a ton more jobs and all that kind of stuff, I'm not really sure that's what we want for our construction business.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to kind of keep it centered there. So yeah, not Niceville and then those other areas that I mentioned.
Man, I feel the same way. Like we get a ton of leads on lots, and I try to help as much as possible. I think I've helped at least a dozen people this week that have sent me leads on lots that are just like not buildable. Unfortunately, it's like there's a reason that people are selling them pennies on the dollar. Like there's no road frontage, or it has road frontage, but not enough, and so it's not going to get any type of permit. Yep. But the other thing is a lot of them, whenever people are reaching out, I'm like, hey, I just want things in Escambia County. I feel the same way. Like Escambia County is like same with Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, and Walton. They're like humongous. And like from the top to the bottom could take an hour and a half to get to. So I feel like there's so much business just kind of there, and I feel comfortable in that in our little realm and with the building codes and just within us. I think it's probably similar to you in Niceville. There's county codes and city codes, so it's already a multi-level amount of codes that you're kind of having to decipher and different types of zoning restrictions and things. So I feel really comfortable here. I'm not opposed to other things, kind of like what you're saying, but there is a nice sense of like, oh, I can run to a project in 10 to 15 minutes as opposed to, because with flips and new construction, there's always a problem that you have to immediately solve, or at least it needs to be solved very quickly. So trying to really kind of stretch out over an hour drive or plus makes things pretty difficult.
Yeah, we worked with the same subs for the last handful of years, and so they're awesome. They know what to expect from us. We know what to expect from them and all that kind of stuff. But even then, you gotta go to the job. You gotta double check stuff.
Totally.
Correct stuff, or there's just stuff that gets lost in translation. So it's definitely important. You gotta be there, and limiting the drive time helps with that. Or doing multiple jobs next to each other. That's something we try to do when we can also.
Oh yeah. We just got a lot under contract, and Sam and I went out to it today, and we were running into an issue because there's already 2 homes, and it's in a historical district, and so the lot setbacks are only 3 feet to each side, so the homes are very, very close. So it's like we met our contractor. Big shout out to Stevens Homes. He's amazing. He's doing really great work. But we were like trying to think like, if we need some block and a frame and we're gonna get a frame package delivered, like where's it gonna go?
We started looking at 2 other lots on the street trying to figure out, I wonder if they'll sell us those ones so we can drop stuff there to build this house and then do the same on the other side of the street.
Yeah. Exactly. Like that's what, when you said that, like trying to do as many projects kind of in the same area as possible, it was like, okay, we need to take a second and like open our eyes and see what the opportunities are literally on this street, which we were fortunate that there's a couple. Not saying that they want to sell or not, but it's like there's a possibility, which is cool, because we had a previous guest that their first deal that they ever did happened to be their neighbors 2 doors down. And it's like until they got into this mindset of how they could invest into real estate, they had this deal that was 2 doors down from them. It's just kind of cool how real estate and these ideas are kind of shifting in your head and things like that. And also you're raising the value for the community. Like you build one house, yes, it can change, but you build 3 or 4, especially on the same street or two streets next to each other. Like that's really kind of making a difference for that area. So
that's a great point. That's been something I've always loved about, real estate is adding value back.
Totally.
So, going back to when I started flipping, first time home buyers, you're helping somebody get into a nice property, for the first time that they're proud to call home. And then going into new construction, the same thing. We build stuff, even our rental property. I'm proud of our rental property. I would live in every one of our rental properties. And like the mobile home park that we redeveloped specifically, I remember when we first were buying it and getting all the different approvals, had to talk to the chief of police, and he told me that the majority of crime in Niceville, which is like still next to none, we're very fortunate in that regard, but the majority of crime kind of came from this particular area in town, which is part of where this mobile home park was located. And then to see after the development was built out and finished, to go through and see them all decorated with Christmas lights at Christmas time, or at Halloween to see families walking down there, trick or treating, and people sitting on their front porch giving out candy. It's just like, that's one of the coolest things to me, is just seeing
that must just give you such a great feeling of pride, like knowing that like you're one of the people that made this possible for these people to be able to enjoy their home and have a real home that they can call home.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and so we take a lot of pride in what we do, and not just like making the numbers work for it to be a good investment, but making the community a better place and just being proud of the product that we're putting out there.
Before I ask my next question, I do want to. We'll probably break this about right here from part 1 to go into part 2. But so if we'll stop here whenever we post these episodes later on. What's your website where people can go and reach out to you so they can get more information and possibly work with you?
Yeah, so it's copilotproperties.co. So there's a lot of confusion there. Some people they're autocorrects.com, but it's .co. So copilotproperties.co.
That's awesome. I definitely recommend if you're interested in doing anything in the Niceville area, give Taylor a shout. Check out his website. A lot of great quality builds and stuff. But now we'll go ahead and continuing on. Over the last few years, you've aggressively grown your rental portfolio. What's your acquisition strategy, and why are you targeting 34 doors by the end of this year?
Sure. So I wanted to start like foraying into rental property for a long time, but I always chased the quick dollar and ended up selling, a project instead of retaining it. And so finally, a couple of years ago, I just said, I got to start somewhere, and just kind of like put a stake in the ground and decided to do that. And it started with, and oddly enough, it happened to be, I had a small property that had a mobile home on it that we rented for a little bit, but then it was in such terrible shape. We had to have the people move, and then we built a new house and then sold it. But I kind of was lucky in the fact that mobile home park that we redeveloped with the 23 units that turned into the 28 units because of just other parcels being nearby, we were able to acquire. That happened to be like the first kind of boost into our rental portfolio. So that when we first in our pro forma, we had it earmarked that we were going to have a property manager manage those for us. But then I started saying, well, I come from an operations background. I can set up a system to do it. I feel like we can manage these in-house, save money. And since they're all brand new, I built them all. I know exactly like how all the mechanical systems and stuff work. I live right around the corner, so I can like run over there if something pops up. I'll commit to managing it for a year and then kind of reevaluating from there. But it was a really good decision that we made because we kind of started a property management arm on our business. There's a lady that we hired kind of around the same time that she does our bookkeeping And then also she comes from a property management background. So she does a lot of the oversight of that. So once we kind of built the system out, she just runs the system and has continued to refine it. So we started off with 3 units, and then the 23 units, they started coming online in groups of 10. So we built out 10, rented those out, then immediately started the next 10 until we built those out. So then we were up to 26. We acquired another piece of property that adjoined to it, built 2 more. That's the 28. And then we just finished a short-term property that we're keeping. So that's the 29. And then we have some townhouses that we're finishing here in the next few weeks. And then that'll be 2 more, and then 3 more at least by the end of 2025 that we'll bring online also. So
can you tell the listeners like what that timeline was to get those 34?
Yeah, so I have to go back and look. I think we built, I think it was in 2022.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I think July of 2022 was when our first 3 came online, and then I think the next 18 months the other 23 came online, and then
wow,
9 months after that, so in the last few years that's how it's kind of.
So more than 10 houses a year really is like kind of what you're averaging. And now are you going to allow that to create a snowball effect and keep growing, or is that kind of, that was your goal and that's where you want to be? Because I know you had mentioned earlier that you don't want to have this big construction business, like you're just kind of wanting to do quality and focusing on that. So
yeah, so the construction, so where we're at now, the new construction is just an avenue to continue to build our rental portfolio.
Cool.
I was going to say, Will, he didn't say anything about limiting that rental portfolio.
I know. I was just trying to separate that to understand, just for people that are listening. Like you had mentioned earlier a lot about the builder equity, right? And then I had asked that question. So just kind of reiterating, if people didn't hear in the last episode, they didn't catch it live, like there is a reason that he's building new construction, adding the equity, and then it allows it to, kind of create a mushroom cloud even quicker, right? And just keep growing.
And add in the fact that, he didn't just have, he's not just going to have 34 rentals. They're 34 high quality rentals, because they're new construction rentals, so this is a very different, portfolio than a lot of people that, hear about stacking doors, because like I said, having 34, brand new houses, I mean, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to just give some caveats. So I don't own all these outright. So I have partners in all these deals.
Right.
So I don't want people to think like that's all mine.
We thought you owned them all in cash.
I wish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question. I've been so like heads down, just trying to get these done and stabilized, that I'm just now starting to step back and say, okay, kind of what is the goal, because I think there is a point where it's like enough is enough, depending on the life that you want to live and kind of the goals and stuff that you have. So that's something, my wife and I, my different business partners and are looking at and starting to talk about, because I think there is a number, where this is enough for what we want to do. And then maybe from there pursue some other deal, or I don't know, but I'm not sure what the number is quite yet, but
I didn't mean to.
That's a good sign that you're probably not close to it, that you got to probably keep stacking them.
Yeah. I just in like really quick thoughts the other day, like I think I would like to be up in the 50s, close to 60, and then kind of reevaluate from there. Because then it just becomes sort of a numbers game based on, what your mortgage, what your loan to value is on a particular project, because the more you have paid off, the less you need to. So it just becomes kind of like a numbers game from there. And then also, they're all new now, but 10 years, 15 years, 12, 15 years from now, they're not going to be new. So
right,
it makes sense to start offloading some of the older ones.
Sure.
All those different things.
Yeah. I think that's something important. Sorry, Sam. Mm-hmm. It's just top of mind. It's like understanding that numbers game. And I think you're going into it a little bit into the equity pitch of like, yes, they're getting older. Like what is the trajectory between how the date of the property, the repairs of the property, but how much is also getting paid off at the same time, and then allowing that to kind of roll into another property or a series of new construction.
And the one bit I was going to even add in too is like, a lot of people on real estate podcasts get caught up in door counts. And I was just going to add in like, this equity buildup is, to me, that's more important than the number of doors, because number of door, you can have, 1,000 trailer park doors, or, you can have like 100 class A, apartment doors, and
that's a trailer park. I don't know.
But so like I said, the equity is really what matters, and I think that like you're in the best position to be snowballing that.
Yeah, and I think we're going to try to pursue kind of like a mix also. So I'd love to do some sort of commercial, whether it's warehouse space or light office, or I don't know, something like that. I mentioned earlier, we have one short-term rental property. That's part of the idea, is just kind of, diversifying a little bit. So that way, if one's not doing great, you're just kind of mixing it up a little bit.
I think selfishly, just going back to the trailer parks and things, can you kind of take us through the development process and what the timelines and kind of the entire development to new construction process look like, going from a mobile home park into a 28 single family neighborhood?
Sure. So we took down the land, and then, and that was actually I had two different options. So I had like one investment partner that wanted to build just single family homes and sell them. I had another investment partner that wanted to build and retain as rental property. And so, like I mentioned, since that was like one of my top goals for the near future, that's the one that I decided to partner with on that. So we took down the land. We had already, while we were under contract, done as much due diligence as possible, even starting like the pre-application for the development order and all that kind of stuff. But so I would say, once we purchased the land, it was probably 6 months, or 4 to 6 months to work through the development process.
Mm-hmm.
And it was another about 6 months to do the horizontal infrastructure. So, we had to get rid of all the trailers, which another cool thing, we had budgeted, X number of dollars there was 11 vacant trailers on the property when we purchased it. So we had budgeted money to get rid of them. And I just came up with this crazy idea to put them on Craigslist and just see if anybody wanted to come get them. And I told people, hey, they're free. You have to pay to haul them off. I don't care if you find a diamond ring inside them. You can keep it. You just need to come get it and take it off. And so we had people come get 9 out of the 11 trailers.
No way.
Terrible condition. Like, I'm talking terrible condition. I don't know what these people wanted to use them for. That most of them said storage, like they had some big farm or something. There's some store stuff in them. But we got rid of 9 out of the 11, and then the other 2 we just demoed. So it was like a fraction of what we had budgeted on that.
That's nice.
That was a win.
90% right there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty incredible, because I can only imagine how much the extra 9 to demo and or haul off. I'm curious on even how did they haul them off? Like, I'm sure that was 9 individual different things that were going on. Like
these companies that move them, that they'll come and they'll come like disconnect them and haul them off. I don't know. It was a unique experience for me also. I never had to deal with that before.
That's pretty cool. So
then we had to work with the city and get all the different approvals from fire, public works. We actually put these were in a PUD, so a planned unit development, and so we had some unique setbacks and stuff that we were trying to do to fit the number of units on the particular product we were doing. So we got went through all those like soft approvals and civil engineering and wetlands delineation, and we had to do geotech boring to figure out the water table for the retention ponds, all that kind of stuff to get the civil engineering done. And then from there we did the site work and had to clear out all the trees, bring in the utilities, work with the Florida Power and Light for this particular area, the city for the water and sewer, and then the cable companies. And we didn't do any gas, so that was it, just power, water, and sewer, and cable and internet. And then brought in the roads, all that kind of stuff. And then, like I mentioned before, then we started construction, and we were doing them in blocks of 10. So we formed up and, built all the foundations and all that kind of stuff, and went from there. I think it took us about 6 months per group of 10, 6 to 7 months per group of 10 on the vertical construction. So they're all identical, except for the facades looked a little bit different. We used it like brick, hardy board accents and things like that. But the interiors were all identical. So then from there, it was just, coordinating with all the subcontractors and suppliers to get all the stuff that we needed to do all of that.
No, I mean, that's awesome. So kind of like 18 months in total of actual construction. But I think it's important to kind of decipher that 4 to 6 months of development as well. Because a lot of people just think like automatically it's just the time to build. But like with what you're saying, 4 to 6, let's just say it was 6 months to develop and then 6 months to build 10, equally in the same amount of time of the development with nothing happening on the land, which a lot of times people kind of don't add into the, to the build. As actually going vertical and going up with construction. It's like that's crazy sometimes, but man, what a payoff. And like how incredible is that? You built a neighborhood, and I don't know, I'm so excited for you and to continue this conversation too, because that's a goal of mine. I'd love to build a neighborhood. And same to you. Like every time you drive in through that neighborhood, you can think of those 9 trailers getting hauled off to now, like you said, Halloween lights during Halloween, Christmas lights during.
And we'll add in, it was the crime area of the community. So not only did he improve it, visually, he helped clean it up to make it better for all the residents of Niceville, because the majority of the crime happened right on the area that he just turned brand new.
Yeah, and then we had 2 new roads that we, brought in there. So I got to name those roads. I actually named one after my daughter, one after my son.
Cool.
I didn't know this either, but there are 3 approved like DOT colors for street signs. You guys know what they are?
What?
Roads, public, like, or what's kept up by the county or the city, right? And then
so there's like different colors on the street sign that are like approved. So it's like the green that you typically see, and then
blue.
Blue.
Yeah.
So the other one's actually brown, which I didn't know.
It's historical, right?
I don't know, but my last name is Brown, so I decided Brown. So it's like
no way.
That's like a hidden nod in our neighborhood that our street signs are brown, and then they're named after my kids. So that's another kind of cool thing in being able to do that. These streets will be named at least for as long as I'm living. So that was neat.
That's so cool.
That is super cool. Now, how exactly did that work? Working with the FDOT and everything, coming from like a state or county maintained road into a private road, and was that a bigger hiccup than any of the other types of parts in the development stages?
Not really. Just I think we're kind of on the parcel's on a corner, so there's 2 roads. I think one of the roads was city maintained, one was county maintained. So we worked with both of them. I think they made us do a traffic study that then proves you're having these new doors, so it's going to increase traffic by this, and can it be done? So that was a part of like the development order process, was doing different pieces of the puzzle.
We're only doing one, but actually today we were talking about a specific corner lot with a visibility clause. And so it has like a major setback due to an intersection, and with the intersection that's coming in, it's on a one-way that heads north, but it's happens to be the first corner lot that ties in, that runs perpendicular, where you can do a turnaround. And because it's the first point for a turnaround, it's like a very important lot, so that they kind of make half of it completely useless. And that's just at like the very basic. So that's why I was kind of curious about FDOT and what you were having to deal with, because we were literally just in the city office talking about it today, and it was overall good news because it's buildable, but it was also not the best news because half the lot's unusable. But obviously it's for safety. Like that's not that.
I'm sorry. I kind of got lucky in the fact that like one of my projects, it was just this one like single family spec home I was building, but it was at the end of a county road, and there was part of it that I wanted to get vacated and added to my parcel for what I was trying to do. So that was like kind of and then it was like since it was at the end of this dead end road, the utilities and stuff hadn't been run to it. So I had to talk with the power company, water, get water and sewer, all that kind of stuff. So I did that on like a really small level just for that one build. And then I think it was like the next year I did this small little like 3-home boutique little neighborhood. So it's kind of like a step up from that. So it's like I kind of had a general understanding, knew who to talk to for different things, but then this one I had to like bring a road in there, and so kind of like some other things, and then going towards the mobile home park, just kind of like another step up. But I've already having worked with the civil engineer, the city, the utility company, so it wasn't like I went from like zero knowledge, zero experience into like this whole new ball game of stuff. Like this natural progression that I was fortunate to have leading up to that helped definitely.
Those are some nice little baby steps that led you to the big times.
Even just to give me confidence, but I mean, I will say, like I had this idea and that we could do all this and it all looked great on paper, but then like the day that construction started, I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I just started like getting really like nervous. Like now I have people depending on me. I have investors depending on me. I have my name so I hope I can pull this off. But I just, head down day after day. What's the next thing I got? What's the next thing? And then when we finished those first 10 units, I remember stepping back and just being like, holy cow, I can see this now. This thing started as a dream, like a pipe dream, 18 months ago or 24 months ago when we were first looking at purchasing the land to what it is now. It was a really surreal experience.
Dude, that's awesome. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you ended up bringing someone in-house, kind of start the property management arm of the business. Why was that important for you, and how has that changed how you operate your portfolio?
So initially it was kind of out of necessity. We still had like a ton of other projects going on, and it just got to the point where it's like, I cannot, the system and stuff is working great, but just the hands-on part of it, I'm not able to do, by myself or with the help that we had at the time. And so it just kind of made sense. I also needed somebody, fortunately she has experience in finance and also property management. So it was a great fit because neither of those roles I didn't need a full-time person for them. I was already working with a part-time, bookkeeping company to help me with the finances. And so it's kind of like a natural transition and step in that direction. But it's been really great for us on the cash flow side of things. That's one of the things I've learned, just being candid, with the listeners, that some of these deals to, kind of like prove myself, I didn't have a lot of credibility. So like to get into these deals, I didn't take a project management fee. I negotiated equity, which is great long-term, but short term in a new business and cash flow and all that kind of stuff, it was a challenge. So I'm not sure I would do it the same way if I went back, because I did that in a lot of different, places. So I've had times where, cash was very tight. Long term, it's going to work out better for me, I think. So I'm thankful in that regard that I didn't just chase, the quick, easy dollar, because I think I could have taken a lot less equity and gotten a, project management fee or construction fee up front. But anyways, that's just something I didn't really think through at the time that I would encourage listeners on their particular deals to think about and make the best decision at the time for them. But hiring that in-house and then starting that arm of our business has definitely helped cash flow, because we still charge our partnerships that own those particular we have an entity that owns each different project. So we still charge them a project management fee. It's just, or I'm sorry, a property management fee. It's just less than what it was if we were outsourcing it.
Right.
And then, we're also to kind of retain that control on just making sure stuff's done how we want it done.
No,
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I don't know how long. We'll just see how our business evolves. It might be something where the lady that's doing that for me now, she might move, in the next year or two. That's what they've kind of indicated to me. So it might be where we stop our new construction and I do more of that myself. We'll have options there depending on kind of where we're at in the business. But that's been good, not only on the cash flow side, but also just to have that kind of stability in our business to be able to make that decision.
Right. I love the cash flow side.
Yeah.
No, I think that's just like kind of how we started this whole episode, right? Was talking about how to be flexible and understand, as the business grows, you gotta change some things up. So being quick on your feet, being able to think and really assess what's happening, not only in the market but what's happening in the business as well. And kind of speaking on that, looking at like the broader scope of the market right now with construction costs, interest rates, land availability, consistent changing of codes and zoning, now adding property management. What are you doing, Taylor, to keep your eye on what's most important right now? And what is that?
So, my wife and I, we've sat down and we have family values. So that's a big,
Awesome.
guiding factor, not only for our family, but also our business. But, you guys get it as a business owner, it's like intricately intertwined with your personal life. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two, which can be good, but it can also be bad. You got to just make sure you're managing that tension well. But we look at those family values and it guides some of that. And then we kind of translate that down into our business and just kind of project out like, here's where we're at for the rest of this year. We go on an annual kind of planning retreat every December. It's right after Christmas. So it's a great time for us just to get away for a couple of days, just the two of us to reevaluate some stuff. And that's one of the things we talk about. We say, hey, here's what, happened this last year, both in the business and also personally. Here's some goals or some things we want to pursue this next year. And then, try to project that out even a couple more years. And so, we've kind of dialed in where we want to keep building and acquiring assets that cash flow. So we're going to continue to kind of pursue that angle. We'll continue to do the property management arm for, our particular properties that aligns with that. And then, we want to be flexible and be able to still say yes and no to the things that are important to us. So we don't want to become so consumed with like, some crazy awesome deal that looks great and will be fun and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be super stressful and it's going to take away from these particular things that are important to us. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but those values kind of guide the majority of what we do.
I think it answers it directly. Like you have to know what that mission statement, what the vision statement is, what the values are here, and then that's really what guides the business, because we all know in business things are constantly changing, but if you stick to those values, it's going to lead you the right way. So
yeah. We want to make money and be successful and be generous and all that kind of stuff, but money's not our main motivating factor in life. And so, there's specific things that we do or don't do because of that. We want to, I would love to help some young up and coming, whether it's like investors or just people. I think some of the trades are going to be some of the highest paying jobs in the next few years. And so anybody who would like to do that, I would love to help them do that. There's not a lot of like younger guys doing like that are general contractors even, so I'd love to find somebody that's, either new out of college or, decided not to go to college that wants to pursue this vocation that I could pour into and help. So those are some things that are important to me also.
That's great. So what's next for you and your team? And then, I was going to add a little bit more to that, but you answered it a lot of that throughout the thing. So what I'm going to ask is, what's next for you and your team? And then what's the ultimate goal, for you and your family? Because you did say money isn't everything. So like, what's your life look like when you've made it, to kind of say like, with it, where you have a point where you feel like, I have accomplished enough, and I do think like this is like where I can say like, hey, I'm good with this.
Yeah. I'll speak to this particular season. So, I have young kids. My son's 12, my daughter's 6. So being available to go to their school stuff or, spend time with them, that's a priority. I mean, there's some times where it's like I have something that I really need to go do, but I forgot about like a program at school for my son or my daughter. And I'm tempted to say I can't go to it, but then, my wife, I'm like, hey, this is part of why we decided to do our business, is so that we could be a part and do these things. And, that's not always the case, but when all possible, I try to make that decision to go do that rather than something in my business that honestly, it can wait like a couple hours, or it could wait till tomorrow. It's going to be there. Work is going to be there.
Yeah,
I love hearing that, because I mean I've met a lot of great people in real estate, and like I said, putting their family first is like such a motivating factor for most of them. And so like I said, I love to see someone who's built that, able to do that, and then it's even cooler that you're able to name street signs after your kids, like, because that's going to be there forever.
Yeah, dude, funny story, just real quick. I was so excited to show my kids. I put them up. I had like a buddy taking a picture of me like hanging up there. I told my wife I want to drive them over there and show it to them. They'll be so excited and think it's so cool. Well, my son was already in a bad mood about something, so it's stupid by me to like still press it. But I just like was so excited to show it to him. So I'm like, oh, there's something really cool to show you. So what is it? And so then we go over there and we pull up, and he's just like, okay, like he like, total like middle schooler. He's in 6th grade.
Oh no!
I was devastated. I was so bummed out. Like, I was like so excited about that. And
I could have named this anything, and I chose your name.
I could have named these after me or mommy. Like little jerk.
You little jerk.
Yeah. That's the stuff that you don't see on people's highlight reels or those kinds of things.
No, man, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It shows right there, like the family values. Like you're so excited. You're just like wanting to name it after them. But that's a typical, middle schooler, right?
Yeah. He later, when he cooled down, like he said he was thankful and appreciative. So it's all good. Yeah. I'm sure I did that a lot to my parents.
I all did.
We all definitely probably think of things that we didn't appreciate that much at the time, but then later on realized like, man, that was one of the best things ever. I should have been way more grateful. Yeah. So I actually later in life thanked my parents for all the books that they bought me as a kid, because like, it's just something, like I said, that when I was a kid, took it for granted, being able to get whatever I wanted at the book fair. And then, years later, I'm like, wow, like I really was privileged to be able to read anything I ever wanted to read because of my parents. So.
Yeah, there's a legacy component that's important to us. Like, and that there's a financial part of that, but also lots of other intangible things that go along with leaving a legacy. So those are the things that we're thinking about and that are important to us, at least right now. And then also we sold our house. I forgot to mention this in 2020. So my very first new construction job, which was our personal house, was like our dream house in a lot of ways. We did a ton of the work ourselves, and it was awesome. It was an awesome house. We're not really attached to stuff, but we love this house. And so we decided to sell it, to take the equity from that and help us kind of get a runway to get the business up and going.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard for us, you know, but we've moved like a ton and lived in a lot of our projects over the years. I think we've counted. So my wife and I this summer have been married 15 years. We've lived in 9 different houses, and we're not military. So it's like,
what a trooper, man. We need to do an interview with her because you got yourself a solid partner there.
She's a boss. She's always been so supportive. She like doesn't understand the financial aspect of it all or anything, but she, you know, trusts me and has been supportive of me since day one. So I couldn't do what we've accomplished together without her support. So I'm super thankful for that. But we sold that house to give us the financial runway to get the business going. So since then we've been kind of displaced. We lived in a rental for 2 years. Then we bought a house that we actually renovated, you know, flipped, however you want to say it, that we've been living in for the last 2 years. It wasn't supposed to be this long, but it's been 2 years. We have a piece of property that we want to build our next, you know, kind of house on. We're just trying to get our finances lined up to do that. So as far as like, you know, peace and stability in my house, that's one of our short-term goals in this particular season is to build that house and move in there and at least live there until the kids graduate high school.
Nice.
That's kind of where those are our focuses in this particular season.
Man, that's awesome. I'm excited to see whenever you guys get some plans put together and everything. That's super exciting.
Have you guys over for a drink or something?
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's like that's super exciting too, because if you said he's in middle school, so till high school, and just running the math, 9 places, 15 years, that would be the longest place you guys live in.
It would, yes.
So that's super exciting, man. I really enjoyed this so much, and I can't wait to have lunch and sit down and meet you, and hopefully do a couple deals together and see your neighborhoods and just kind of see everything you guys have done, because it's really inspiring. I know that's my trajectory, and I know Sam's on a similar one, like being able to elevate the area that we're currently occupying and bringing value back to somewhere where we live and spend money, and other people are spending their hard-earned dollars in the local economy. Like that's something that is really, really close to me and what I want to do. So this has been really inspiring, and I really appreciate your time. In summary, and I know it might be difficult, but for those people that are listening and have been hanging on here or listening to this episode whenever it gets launched, you know, you've been all facets of real estate, from just flipping to building entire neighborhoods, to being able to, you know, bring your kids over and see street signs named after them, like everything in between. What do you think would be the best piece of advice from all the different layers and pieces that you've been involved in if someone wanted to get started today?
I think just for them to figure out like what gets, like why do they want to do it? You know, like what's their why? If it's just to make money or whatever, you know, I'm not sure that's going to sustain you, especially in this industry. Because like you said, there's times where you barely break even, or I've lost on a couple of deals over the years. So, you know, that's part of it. So I think like what's your why, really like ironing that out, and then looking at like what are the resources that you have around you that can help you get into your first deal, and then getting creative. So yeah, I know there's lots of different things that people can Google and avenues that they can do, you know, whether it's like house hacking, buying a house and, you know, getting roommates. Like actually my cousin, she did this. She bought a townhouse a couple years ago. She's single. She has like 2 or 3 roommates that more than pay for her mortgage and her housing expenses since she moved in. She's been building that equity. It's already worth way more, you know, than it was when she bought it. So I, you know, just figuring out like what connections do you have that can get you into your first deal, and then just figuring out how to make it happen. Persevering, you know, and not, if one deal doesn't work out, go to the next deal. You know, there's deals that I see every day, and I'll, you know, spend time like vetting or whatever that end up not materializing, but you gotta keep hustling and keep persevering. So that would be my biggest encouragement, I think, just figuring out like how to start, what's your why, and then getting after it.
Love it.
Great advice, man. And this is, like I said, like Will said, such a great episode. Definitely enjoyed getting to know you, learning your journey from starting with the flips. Now you're a full-on developer in Niceville. I mean, naming street signs. I mean, it's like I said, it's just really cool. Again, where can people find you and check out your website and see everything about your company?
Yeah, I just want to say, Sam, Will, honored and privileged to be here today. Thanks for all that you guys do just in this particular avenue and in lots of different ways to pour into this community and help make connections for people. I think it's an invaluable resource that is greatly needed and greatly appreciated. So thank you guys for that. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. I'm excited to get to know both of you better off air. And I feel unqualified to be here. Like, I appreciate you guys talking me up and boosting my confidence, but
more than qualified, man. You built
more than qualified, man.
Yeah.
You built a neighborhood. What do you mean?
I know, but at the end of the day, man, I'm just an average guy who works hard and, you know, tries to do all that I can do to make the world a better place. And I've had a lot of people pour into me over the years that have helped me become, you know, the person that I am today, both personally and professionally. And so, but yeah, I would love to give back all that back to whoever is interested in. So if it's just a phone call, if it's to meet up to grab coffee or lunch, I'm happy to like drive people around and let them see this, you know, stuff hands-on. I'd be happy to like help coach somebody in some way, whether it's like on the construction or business side. However I can be a resource, I would love to do that. And so people can either go to my website, copilotproperties.co. They can email me. It's taylor.brown@copilotproperties.co. We have Instagram. That's the only kind of thing that we have as far as social media is concerned. But just, yeah, reach out, and I'd love to help however I can.
Dude, awesome.
Man, thank you so much for joining us. Will, what's our website for everybody?
Yeah, man. First off, big shout out to Clean Eats. And thanks so much for Clean Eats allowing us to have the podcast and, you know, getting awesome guests. And second off, Taylor, thank you so much. This is awesome. And I really mean it. Like, I'm excited to meet you. And you know, I know we had a limited time, but whenever we can just kind of dive into all the details, because that's the one thing about construction, no matter if it's new construction or flips, you made it sound very elegant. You're like, well, each project is unique in their own sense, like, right? But just kind of diving into some of those details. But Sam, if you guys can like our YouTube, we're trying to do these live now, so you can just track it right over to the EliteRealEstatePodcast.com, and then same thing on YouTube, the Elite Real Estate Podcast, and subscribe there. That really helps. And then also in these, when we're doing these live sessions, they don't come out for a few weeks. So if you guys have any questions, just put them live in the chat, especially when we have an expert in the field and the guest is here, and then Sam can just read off, like, if someone's interacting, like, and you have a specific question outside of just more or less this interview. And hopefully, Taylor, we made you feel a little more comfortable as just like open-ended conversation.
Yeah, you guys.
No, I appreciate that, because that's our goal here. Is we want to interview and we want to learn from you, and then being able to share it with everyone here that's local is like the added bonus. Like, everything that I hope everyone checks out, copilotproperties.co, and I hope you get a couple coffee meetups and lunches, and really the listeners, something that Taylor's doing is offering. I mean, it's so cool. He's like, I'll take you guys to cruise around. If you want to learn this trade, or if you want to do something, I will help you do that. Like, not very many guests, even though all of our guests have been fantastic, are being so, you know, welcoming with open arms. So Taylor, thank you so much. If you guys could check out the Elite Real Estate Podcast and our YouTube, that'd be massive. And Taylor, one more time, if you want to give everyone your contact, and then Sam, wrap us up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's taylor.brown@copilotproperties.co. You can call me too, 850-409-1313. Goes right to my cell phone. And go to our Instagram page or website, copilotproperties.co. Love to connect with you. And Yeah, it's community, not competition.
Community.
That's what we're about.
Man, yeah, that is such a great note to end it on. Community is everything for us. So man, just such great advice. Definitely anybody interested in new construction, check out his website, shoot Taylor a message. He's done a great job. It's really cool to hear how someone has progressed going from starting with flips to small project to a little bit bigger project to whole neighborhood. So like I said, great episode. Please subscribe to our YouTube, the Elite Real Estate Podcast. And if you got any properties that you're currently looking at that you have questions on, you might want a second look of eyes, go to the EliteRealEstatePodcast.com and fill out that little questionnaire at the bottom. Or if you have a property you want to sell, Will and me, in the Escambia County area, we're buying lots all the time. We're trying to buy as many as we can right now. We have 5 under contract currently. So we are buying and closing. So like I said, just bring us any deals you have in Escambia County, and can't wait to see you guys next week on the Elite Real Estate Podcast. So can't wait to see you then.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.